Good morning, genealogy friends. Oh, I forgot my tea. All right, well, sorry, I feel like I'm just like a minute late. Hopefully anybody who was waiting wasn't waiting too long. I could not figure out what to call today's topic. So I was just sitting here with my pen hovering over the Post-it note thinking, okay, how do I put this? Even now I'm looking at it and I'm like, people are not going to know what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is how to get family stories going when you're talking to people. And if you have a hard time writing down your family stories, recording your own history, hopefully these are things that will help prompt you. It can be awkward to sit down with relatives, especially if you aren't really close and you don't talk to them all the time, and basically just, put a video camera in their face or just sit there with a pen and pencil and be like, okay, great. Tell me about your life. Tell me about your mother. Tell me about your sister. It really puts people on the spot. And I've realized that I've gotten some of my worst canned answers in moments like that when I'm so excited because I never get to see somebody. And so I immediately just, demand family history information from them, and they end up just blinking at me and wishing the conversation was over. So we're going to talk about 5 different ways to make those conversations easier. And again, if you're somebody who has a hard time recording memories, if you've, kind of sat down to think, okay, I'm going to write some of my stories down, and then you just have a Dickens moment where you're like, okay, I was young, I grew up, what do I say? David Copperfield. Hopefully these will help you too. I'm lucky I don't have that issue. Let me flip this. I am a huge journaler, and let me turn towards the light. I love to tell my stories all the time. So, I don't run out usually of things to say. However, I have noticed even with like my husband and I have been together for a long time, but, when you just tell somebody, okay, great, tell me about your childhood, that's a huge loaded question, versus breaking it down and saying, let's talk about this specific moment. Let's whatever. So we're going to talk about that. And I hope that this will be helpful to you. I don't know. So the holiday season's coming up, which is why I wanted to do this. This is a big time of year when people tend to see family that, maybe this is the only time of year that you see family. It's a weird year. So I don't know how many of you just aren't going to see family this Christmas. We're kind of in that boat. We saw people virtually over Zoom for Thanksgiving. I don't know if we're going to do that again for Christmas. But we're not planning. Even my, more immediate family, my siblings, my parents who all live in town, I don't know that we're going to see them. We didn't for Thanksgiving. So, it's too bad because this is really a time of year when I both like to share the family history stuff that I've been working on, and I usually make some progress suddenly. Although I have been enjoying Zoom calls and phone calls and some Marco Polo. At some point I should talk about Marco Polo. Marco Polo is great for family historians. But so I've been connecting with family in other ways because of the pandemic and because we're all at home and occasionally feeling kind of lonely. And so that's been nice. It's just, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to, I don't want to say, okay, this is for you all because you're all going to get together with family this holiday season because it's a weird year. And again, there are some people who just don't any holiday season. So anyway, let's assume though that you're getting together with family and you want to gather family stories and you don't know how, or you want to leave stories that you know about your family or about your own, life history behind, but you keep sitting down to that blank piece of paper and you don't know what to write. So the classic way, so the first way I'm going to talk about 5 ways. The first classic way that people tend to gravitate towards is interview questions. I have nothing against interview questions. Interview questions can be obviously very productive. We're talking, you show up with a list of questions. Where were you born? What was your childhood home like? What do you remember about your mother? What do you remember about your father? What games did you play as a child? What did you like about school? Usually people can prepare these. You can find lists of interview questions online. I've never shared one. Again, not my favorite method, and here's why. I do think that it encourages, I can't remember, what do we call it in law school? I don't remember. There was like a type of questioning where basically you were just encouraging them to give you one word answers and to not be helpful, versus like open-ended questions that encouraged more storytelling and more, revealing truth. Interview questions tend to be, when were you born? Here's the date. What was your childhood home like? It was in Alabama and it had 2 rooms. Like, you might get a story and you might not. And again, people who are faced with interview questions, can get into that mode where they're just trying to like get through it and get them done and give like the right answer, versus putting that storytelling cap on and thinking about the more descriptive stuff that you might actually be looking for. So I think interview questions can kind of be hit or miss, but again, they're a classic. If you have somebody who's patient and will give you lots of time, it can be a good way to encourage storytelling. And you might get somebody who goes off on a tangent with every question, which I absolutely adore. So yeah, interview questions is the first one. This is the second one. I love to look at photos. I love to take a handful of photos and specifically say, okay, what am I looking at? Even, let's say I have a photo that says so-and-so's wedding on the back. So I know what I'm looking at, okay, so this is so-and-so's wedding. This is this year, because I know that from my data. But photos tend to help people remember details. They might remember something that they don't think is important enough to share, but could be illuminating about somebody in the family, maybe themselves, maybe the event. Photos do encourage storytelling. You might get somebody who just looks at a photo and goes, oh, that's Aunt Roberta, and then that's it. But usually they'll be able to tell you, where is she, or something about her, or, oh, she always wore this thing, or that's the car that Uncle Jimmy bought her. So yeah, photos is actually, I prefer to lean on photos versus interview questions when I'm walking into a situation where I know I'm going to want to sit down with people and make them talk to me about family history. Listening to music is an underrated and underused way to prompt memories, but it's fantastic. So, slight tangent, but when I was in law school, one of the studying tricks that I used is that when I was studying a particular piece of law for an upcoming exam, I would listen to the same piece of classical music when I studied a certain part of my notes. And then for a different part of my notes, I would listen to a different song. The thing is, they've proven that your memory really helps with music. It activates some other part of your brain. So when you hear a song, it tends to bring back memories of a certain situation or whatever. So when I was in the exam, I'd get to a certain part of the exam and I would think to myself, okay, this is this part of constitutional law. And I would start to think about whatever, piece of classical music I needed to drum up. And that would usually help me remember what I had written in my notes and stuff like that. In that same way, people in an almost involuntary way can have memories triggered by music. If you're doing, this is especially great for your own journaling. I have songs that remind me of high school. I have songs that remind me of my parents, of road trips that we took when I was little, of weddings that I've attended. So my husband and I, our wedding song was the Rainbow Connection, the Muppet song, sung by Sarah McLachlan. And that song not only brings up memories from our wedding, but it brings up, we taught ourselves to waltz badly for our first dance in our little crummy basement apartment in student housing when we were living in Columbus, Ohio. So that song brings up all sorts of storytelling that's like beyond the fact that it was our first dance. And I have song lists and things like that written out in my family history notes and in my journals because not only because it helps me with the like writing down the memory in the moment, but because knowing that I can listen to that song and remember that time could be helpful later when, I start to lose those memories. So if your parents have specific songs, you could bring them up. I actually, if you like to listen to music when you're doing your genealogy work, I have playlists for different, I'm kind of going off on a tangent now, but I have playlists for different sides of the family. The Smithsonian has these fantastic albums. So I have Appalachian folk songs for part of my husband's family. My grandparents loved to listen to Patsy Cline. The song always was their wedding song, and I like to listen to the Patsy Cline a lot when I'm working on my grandparents' stuff. It's just things like that. Because again, music is so evocative of emotion and reminds me of talking to them about things like that before they passed. So music is great. Okay, so that was the third one. The fourth one, this is more helpful if you're going to be traveling to a place where your family's from, or you have a lot of hometown memories. And again, I don't know if that's going to apply to anybody who doesn't live near family or who won't be seeing family this year, but actually getting in the car and going to places, driving by an old house, driving by an old church, driving, I don't know, it encourages storytelling to turn down streets and be like, oh, this is where so-and-so lived and this thing happened. A little more than a year ago, last fall, 2019, my husband and I took a trip back east to Ohio, which is where my husband's from. And we didn't take the kids. We just spent a few days, seeing family and we had to go out there for something. And because we didn't have the kids, we had, unexpected free time. And we ended up driving around Akron, and we drove to the places where my husband grew up, where he used to live. We went to his elementary school, which has since been shut down. We went to the baseball field where he played Little League, and I made some videos. But at one point we were also just driving around, and I just turned on I have a smartphone that I'm recording on right now. It's very easy to find different apps that will let you take recordings, audio recordings. But they've created a lot of apps for note taking for students that have great audio recording. But you can also just turn a video on, even in the car, even if what you're actually videoing is the ceiling of your car or the cup holder, because it's still going to capture that audio. It was fun to just listen to my husband talk about his childhood as memories came up, as we turned different corners, without that pressure of me sitting down across from him at a table and saying, okay, tell me about how you grew up. Tell me about riding your bike around with Greg. What was that like? Because again, that puts people on the spot, and they feel like there's right answers and wrong answers versus people just talking because they want to share stories with you. So, I love those videos, and it makes me wish that I had spent more time. My grandparents spent a lot of their lives living in Napa. And I know when we drove around, they used to talk about things, but I didn't think about it as okay, it's time to capture this for family history. And now I do wish that we had driven around the city and just had collected some of those memories about, this and this, and this place used to be this thing, and Marjorie used to live here and stuff like that. And then the last one that the last prompt that I wanted to share with you today, this is something, if you really get stuck, it's kind of similar to interview questions, but the nice thing about taking this approach is that if you're in a group situation, if you're sitting at a table with a few of your relatives, this can be a good conversation starter that gets people talking instead of just sitting down with 3 or 4 people and saying, okay, tell me about how you guys grew up. Because again, even in groups, people feel like they're on the spot. And that's to take a specific event in history. It could be an event in your family, Roberta's wedding. It could be, you could. You could sit people down and say, okay, tell me about the Christmases when you grew up, and you're going to get some stories. But the more specific, the better. And big events people connect memories to big events. And if you don't want to do a family event, try doing a historical event. Right now, when September 11th happened, I was in my, what would that have been? I guess I was in my second year of college, so a lot of my friends were in college. We all have, our memories of where were you when you heard about that, and then what happened in the next couple of days and things. My parents growing up near San Francisco had specific memories about concerts or things that had to do with, Haight-Ashbury, and that was kind of my parents' crowd. You could go with, depending on which generation you're talking about, I'm just saying you could go through different historical events and just ask people about. My grandparents were in a couple of the larger earthquakes in California, and they had interesting stories about that. anyway, that can just be a good way to at least get storytelling going. That's the thing. Once people warm up, unless you have relatives who are very private, in which case you have to respect that. I mean, you can't, believe me, I've tried to grill and cross-examine my relatives like crazy. You can only imagine how annoying I am at family functions for people who do not want to talk about the past and really, don't have any more stories about their mother and wish that I would just leave them alone. But I do find that most people don't mind talking as long as you aren't making them feel like they have to give you the right answer. They have to, come up with something poetic on the spot. So I hope that these were helpful. And again, if you're not talking about getting together with family, listening to music, driving around. I have driven around. So we're back here in Salt Lake City now, which is where I was born in California, but I grew up here. And I have driven around by myself. I have a video that I took of me standing in front of my elementary school. And it's not even a video I took, for my children or to be shared with anybody or anything like that. It's just I wanted to videotape myself walking around and just talking about different memories as they were surfacing. Again, you want to honor your own stories. Don't forget to record them. They are important. Even if you can't see how they're important to you now, just think about all of the things that you wish that your great-grandmother and your great-great-grandmother had written down and somehow preserved for you to find later. So anyway, that was Thursday. I'll be back tomorrow sharing a resource. I might even try to screen share. In theory, I should be able to share my screen on a Facebook Live if I don't do it on my phone. I might try that. So you might have to bear with me if we have technical difficulties, and I will have a backup if that doesn't work. But there's so many resources out there that I want to share, and a lot of them, it's just easier if I can actually show you what I'm talking about. And we've done okay with the whole let me hover my phone in front of my computer approach. So if I can't make the screen sharing work, then we can always do that. But I do think that it would be a better experience for you guys if you could really clearly see exactly what I'm doing as I maneuver through a site. So yeah, no spoilers though. I will talk about what resource I'm sharing tomorrow. All right, thanks for being here, guys.